Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As we move forward on the difficult job of securing our nation's financial future, the Congress will face many difficult decisions. Programs will have to be cut and some even eliminated. All of those programs are there because someone wants them. We have to look carefully at each one and decide whether the benefit it creates is worth the cost of maintaining it. Mr. Speaker, the House is not in order.
The gentleman is correct. The House will be in order. Members, please take your conversations off the floor. The gentleman from Mississippi may resume.
After more than 2 years of hearings, investigations, and oversight, the Committee on House Administration has identified not just a program, but a federal agency that we cannot justify to the taxpayers. That agency, the Election Assistance Commission, should be eliminated. Mr. Speaker, while the House is going to be making some very difficult spending decisions in the future, this is actually a clear and easy choice. The EAC was created in 2002 by the Help America Vote Act. HAVA passed the House with a large bipartisan majority. 172 Republicans voted for the bill that created the EAC. Its creation was a bipartisan choice, and so should be its termination. One of the primary reasons that the EAC was created was to distribute money to states to update voting equipment and voter registration systems. The EAC has accomplished that, paying out over $3 billion to states for those purposes. With our deep debt and deficit, there almost certainly will be no more money for the EAC to distribute, meaning that that function is complete. Another of the EAC's main functions, conducting research on election issues, is also complete. The agency has completed all of 19 planned election management guidelines, as well as the 21 quick start guides. It has completed 4 of the 5 studies required under HAVA, and the 5th is tied up in an interagency controversy, making it unlikely that it will ever be finished. Mr. Speaker.
Suspend. The House will be in order. Members, please take your conversations off the floor. The gentleman may resume.
The EAC also maintains a clearinghouse for election officials to share experiences working with voting systems, and it operates a program to develop voluntary guidelines for voting systems, test voting systems against those guidelines, and certify that systems comply with those guidelines. 35 states and territories use the federal testing and certification system in some way to decide what voting systems their election officials can purchase and use. Unlike the grants and research programs that are now obsolete, the clearinghouse and the testing and certification programs.
The House will be in order. Gentleman may resume.
The clearinghouse and the testing and certification programs provide continuing value for state and local election officials. Against that backdrop, we have to look at the reality of what has happened to the EAC. When it was created by HAVA, the EAC was a small agency authorized for 3 years to spend up to $10 million per year. That was 9 years ago. The agency is still there, and its last full-year appropriation was for almost $18 million. Since a staff ceiling was removed in 2007, the agency has doubled its size. And this doubling came despite the fact that many of the EAC's responsibilities were completed or diminished. The average salary at the EAC is over $100,000. It has an executive director, a chief operating officer, a chief financial officer, and an accounting director. In its budget request for 2012, the EAC proposed to spend 51.7% of its budget on management and administration costs. Mr. Speaker, that bears repeating. The EAC planned to spend more than half of its budget on overhead. An agency with that plan is an agency that should be eliminated. The need to eliminate the EAC is so great that the National Association of Secretaries of State, a bipartisan group whose members have received the more than $3 billion distributed by the EAC, has passed 2 resolutions calling for Congress to dissolve the agency. In 2005 and again in 2010, the Secretaries of State asked us to do what I'm asking this House to support today. Beyond simply being an agency with an increasing size and a dwindling purpose, the EAC has proven time and time again that what the agency knows how to do best is to be reckless and irresponsible with taxpayer dollars. In the short time I have served on the Committee on House Administration, we have learned of 2 different cases where legal claims were filed against the EAC for discrimination against candidates for the position of General Counsel. The first case involved discrimination based on the candidate's political affiliation. The second involved discrimination based on the candidate's service in the military. Political neutrality and assistance to military and overseas voters are values the EAC should promote, not undermine. On top of that, these cases are expensive for the taxpayers. In the development of this bill, we have sought out and received a considerable amount of input from election officials and others in hearings at the committee and other settings. That input has allowed us to improve this bill as we move forward. Perhaps most importantly, we added a guidelines review board that gives election officials and others a formal seat at the table when voting system guidelines are developed. This board streamlines 2 existing boards into a single smaller one, but preserves the ability of states and local elections officials to stay involved directly. Before I close, I would like to thank Chairman Hall from the Committee on Space, Science, and Technology. He has worked closely with us as a partner in developing this bill. I appreciate his efforts to improve the bill and to bring it to the floor. This bill is a careful and thoughtful measure to close down a federal agency in a responsible way. To sustain an agency that has completed its assigned studies, dispersed its assigned grants, and fulfilled most of its mandates is the definition of irresponsibility. And we haven't rushed through this process. We've held hearings. We've listened to numerous experts. We've kept and reassigned the programs that provide true value for election administrators. And now is simply the time to end the EAC and save American taxpayers at least $33 million in the next 5 years. It doesn't get any easier to find examples of wasteful government spending. If we can't do this, we might as well pack up and go home, because this is as obvious as it gets. Mr. Speaker, thank you, and I reserve the balance of my time.